happily exclaims to her brother that the flowers are so pretty, and he smiles in agreement. With a small, thoughtful smile, he reaches out and plucks one of the white flowers from the vine. The boy gently places the flower in her hair, telling that it fits her perfectly, causing her to blush and thank him. Her joyful expression suddenly falls as she lets out a small gasp, prompting her brother to ask with concern what is wrong. She looks down with a sorrowful gaze, wondering aloud if it was painful for the flower. He realizes he failed to consider that and has upset her, but thinks to himself that it is all right because is on track to grow up into a kind person. Embracing his sister, the boy reaffirms his resolve to change her future, having been reincarnated as the older brother of a villainess fated to die. The scene shifts to a vision from his past life, where he is suddenly slapped hard across the face. His girlfriend at the time furiously demands to know who is more important, her or his sister, and declares that they are breaking up. He touches his face as the vision concludes, reflecting that it was from a past life and remembering that his family had a lot of love for each other. He recalls that because of their parents' busy work schedules, he had to stand in for them, even telling his sister to eat her carrots as she loudly refused. It had always been his responsibility to also take care of his sickly sister, who would often be unwell in bed. The screen on his phone shows that the time is 21:09. Her hand gently holds onto his as he looks at the device. Arriving home, he announces that he will start making dinner, but she, coughing on the sofa, requests a drink and his special blend of hot tea. His sister explains that she is en route this time after he asks if she is playing that game again. He tells her not to push everything she finds a pain onto him when she says it is the combat part of the game and asks him to play. Touching her forehead, her brother confirms she has a fever and says dinner will be late, causing her to think that she has been exposed. She protests that she already decided to see the end of this character's route today as he takes the controller, telling her to go back to her room and sleep. He resigns himself to playing in her stead after she proposes that she lie down and watch, calling it a good compromise that can't be helped. He thinks about the game's story of hero and saintess, considering it a standard as a prompt asks if he wants to read the book. His sister asks if he means the villainous Caroline, just as he internally marvels at the amazing drill hair character who calls the protagonist a gutter rat. He explains that he doesn't prefer that type of character but rather sees her as a pitiful person whom no one ever loved, as his sister recalls how Caroline even died in the story. Lying comfortably in bed, she tells her brother that she will probably leave mid-game in his life as well, prompting him to tell her not to say such things. He declares with a serious expression that in the future, he plans to tell any boyfriend she brings home that they will have to go through him first. Blushing under the covers, she protests that saying something like that is what a father is supposed to do. The scene shifts to a hospital room where he recalls how they seemed like doting siblings on the surface, as his sister's voice apologizes to him. In his memory, a frail thanks him for being with her all this time, believing she has been causing him problems their whole life. Her brother cries out her name in anguish, desperately insisting through his tears that he never once thought of her as a bother. He is left hunched over in grief at her bedside after she passes away, narrating that was how his sister's life came to an end. With a look of shock, learns from someone off-panel that his parents were involved in a car accident and have been taken to the emergency room. He stands solemnly in the rain before their graves, recalling the police's theory that they were probably driving recklessly to be there for his sister's final moments. After the sudden death of his entire family, narrates that he stopped forming meaningful relationships with anyone. He types at his keyboard, explaining that he had a crippling fear he would once again lose someone close to him. His colleague suddenly grabs him from behind at his desk, cheerfully announcing it is time for their drinking session, but apologetically says he is a little occupied. The man insists that the excuse will not fly again and that is joining them today no matter what, as the management will get mad at him otherwise. At the restaurant, a colleague asks San if he just had a baby, and he enthusiastically confirms it while offering to show them a picture. San excitedly shows a photo of his daughter, asking if she is cute and looks on and quietly agrees. A female colleague then asks him if he is married or has a girlfriend, and he explains that his last girlfriend was back in university. The woman then suggests he go on a light date with her shy friend, revealing that the girl had told her during lunch that she finds him attractive. He internally realizes that the drinking session was a setup for a date. Politely declines the offer, explaining that he is not looking for anything romantic recently, and the woman understands while apologizing for putting pressure on him. As he leaves, he apologizes in his thoughts, believing that there are probably a lot of people out there who are better for her than he is. Walking home alone, he reflects on the prickly feeling from the encounter and decides to just buy something from the convenience store, reaffirming his preference to be alone. Suddenly caught in the blinding headlights of an oncoming vehicle, calmly thinks that this must be the end for him. In his final moments, he is glad that he decided to reject the girl earlier, as it spared her from potential grief. Reborn as an infant, he wonders if this is God's punishment for making that woman cry. Lying in a crib in a large room, the baby now named hears a voice announce that it is time for him to have his milk. He is confused by the maid's attire and the Western-style interior of the room. Is shocked when the maid complains in Japanese about drawing the short stick, making him wonder if he is in Japan. Observes that he has two caretakers, neither of whom is his mother, as one impatiently tells him to hurry up and finish his bottle, calling him a dense child. Another caretaker remarks what a pitiful and unsettling baby he is since he doesn't cry or laugh, noting his white hair likely means he is colorless, which leaves him wondering what that means. He realizes with a jolt that aside from basic necessities like being fed, changed, and bathed, he is being completely neglected by his caretakers. Recalls hearing about a cruel experiment where neglected babies all died, but reflects that unlike them, he is a 27-year-old adult on the inside. The painful memory of his past family reinforces his resolve not to get deeply involved with anyone, as he does not want to experience losing someone close for a second time. He therefore concludes that it is better for him not to form any relationships from the very start. However, years later as a toddler, he is introduced to a newborn baby the maid calls his sister, and his first thought upon seeing her is how beautiful she is. The full realization that he now has a sister hits him with utter shock. Immediately recoils, reminding himself that he has already decided he no longer wishes to experience the loss of another. As he stands there processing this, a woman's voice from across the hall remarks on how much he has grown and introduces herself as his mama. His mother looks down at him and remarks that she thinks he isn't cute enough before calling over a maid. Is then dressed up with a large bow, looking on with disdain as his parents suddenly fawn over how cute he is, making him wonder if these are really his parents. His mother complains that the baby in the other crib is so loud as she and her husband turn to walk away. The young boy listens in disbelief as his parents call his sister Caroline a noisy child and decide to go enjoy their tea time, completely ignoring her incessant crying. Is left standing completely stunned in the room as his parents leave him and his crying sister all alone. He frantically runs to the door and bangs his little fists against it, internally screaming at them for leaving a baby alone in that state. The toddler then overhears two servants deciding they can leave the children be since they have already been fed, prompting him to mentally yell at them to do their job. He walks back into the nursery and tries to convince himself that it is not his problem, but his determined expression shows his internal conflict as Caroline continues to wail. Distracts himself by looking at his toys, wondering what kind of kink it is to play with building blocks at his mental age of 28 and confirming the language in a picture book is Japanese. With a look of annoyance, he picks up a baby rattle from the floor while his sister continues to cry loudly in her crib. With a look of annoyance, presents the rattle to his crying sister, and her eyes widen as she quiets down for a moment. He notes her reaction and asks if she wants to hold it herself as Caroline reaches out for the toy with a small ah. The baby accidentally flings the rattle with surprising force, hitting squarely in the head and sending him flying backwards. Lying dazed on the floor, he declares that this is officially no longer his problem and tells his sister to just keep crying by herself. Tries his best to ignore her by reading a book, internally chanting that it is not his problem over and over. His concentration breaks as he glances at a clock, suddenly wondering if it is not way past the time for his sister to have her milk. Concerned, the small boy walks over to the large nursery door and begins to knock for the servants. He presses his ear to the door and overhears the maids dismissing his actions, realizing with frustration that they are just ignoring him at this point. The toddler then jumps in a desperate but futile attempt to reach the doorknob, cursing that he cannot reach it. Defeated, stands helplessly before the closed door, unable to get out and find help for his hungry sister. A maid exclaims in surprise as she opens the door, just as, who was trying to open it himself, tumbles backward with a cry. Thinking that was a close call, she steps into the nursery while the toddler gets to his feet and urgently shouts that Caroline needs her milk. He watches with his arms sternly crossed, supervising the maid as she finally begins to feed his baby sister from a bottle. Caroline happily drinks her milk, and once she is finished, the maid announces that she is done and prepares to leave the room. Then points insistently towards his sister and yells "diapers," startling the baby, who lets out a small yelp. He smiles softly as he watches a now comfortable Caroline cooing in her crib, thinking to himself that it is good she has a full belly and clean diapers. The toddler then becomes flustered as his sister peeks over the crib, insisting that he only helped this one time because her noisy crying was annoying him. Realizing the maid is not coming back, he sighs in resignation, deciding that he will have to be the one to change Caroline's diaper. The boy then leans over his now sleeping sister and sings a lullaby, telling himself it is just this once while wondering if the lyrics are even correct. He finds himself reading a picture book aloud to Caroline, who is happily playing with her feet, as he once again internally justifies his actions with the thought "this once." Exclaims with delight that Caroline has managed to sit up straight all by herself, calling it amazing. The happy baby then proudly holds up one of the building blocks towards him, letting out a small "ah." He accepts the block she is happily offering with a gentle smile, thanking her with a slightly puzzled expression. Immediately has an internal breakdown, denying that his fondness is real and insisting he only takes care of her because he is bored with nothing but children's toys and books around. His sister suddenly plays peekaboo, startling him with a happy. He lets out a flustered back at her before quickly apologizing for his reaction and gently patting her on the head. That night, curses as he realizes he feels unwell, just as his sister offers him a block again, making him wonder how many times she wants to play this game. Lying in his large bed, he concludes that he has a fever and suspects it might be the flu or some other contagious disease. His first thought is of his sister, and he looks over at her crib with concern, determined to be careful not to pass the illness on to her. A moment later, a sharp knock is heard at the nursery door. Explains to the servants that he has a fever and might infect Caroline, but they refuse to move him, stating they need the Lord's permission. Frustrated by their response, he tugs on a servant's clothes and thinks to himself that he should just forget it. The toddler then startles them by demanding with adult-like clarity that they at least move his bed as far away from his sister as possible. As they carry him to the relocated crib, the servants whisper fearfully that he must be cursed or possessed to speak like that at only 1 year old. He tells them to get out once they are finished, and they quickly agree, placing him in the bed and leaving the room. Lying awake, the boy realizes with regret that it might have been a bad idea to stop acting like a child in front of the staff. His head and entire body ache terribly, and he thinks the last time he had a fever this severe was when he was a child in his previous life. A memory surfaces of his past life, recalling how his sister was always by his side whenever he was sick. In his feverish delirium, he sees a crying silhouette and wonders who it is before faintly calling out's name. His own past voice then echoes in his mind, reassuring the crying girl that her will stay right by her side and asking her to please stop crying. Waking with a start, remembers his illness and frantically tells his sister across the room that she cannot come any closer because it might be a contagious disease. With tears welling in her eyes, Caroline reaches out from her crib and desperately calls out for her, over and over. He is completely taken aback, realizing this is the first time his sister has ever referred to him as her brother, even though he only took care of her because he had no choice. Caroline then begins to climb precariously over the railing of her crib, causing to shout "no" in absolute panic from his bed. The small girl tumbles headfirst out of the crib, falling helplessly towards the floor below. In a flash, he launches himself out of bed and manages to catch her just in time, holding her in his arms as she looks up at him with a relieved smile. Pulls his sister into a tight embrace, telling her with a blush that he is so glad she is okay. The sudden exertion is too much for his feverish body, and he collapses onto the floor, weakly stating that he cannot go on. Caroline crawls over to his unconscious form with a look of concern, gently calling out for her. After getting no response, she looks confused for a moment before starting to repeatedly pat his face to try and wake him up. Caroline contentedly cuddles up to her unconscious brother after dragging him across the floor. He slowly wakes up with a soft groan, his vision still blurry and his body aching. The toddler sits up with a jolt, clutching his chest as he wonders in shock if he actually lost consciousness. He touches his forehead in surprise, realizing that his fever is completely gone and his body feels perfectly healthy again. The young boy greets his sister with a soft "good morning," dismissing the thought that she stayed by his side out of worry because she is only an 8-month-old baby. She beams at him with a joyful cry of "eh," and he stares back, stunned by the overwhelming feeling that despite his decision to close himself off, something is changing. Clutching the fabric of his shirt over his heart, he realizes with certainty that there is no way he can stop this bond from forming. Pulls her into a tight hug, fully accepting that she is his precious younger sister and he is her older brother. Sometime later, he stands with his sister in front of a large bookshelf and asks her what she would like to read today. She excitedly presents a large book titled The Legend of the Holy Empire, and her brother agrees to read the biography of their country to her. He reads too from the book, which tells the story of how just when everyone thought it was over, the hero and saintess appeared to face the demon king. She looks up at him with a questioning, as he comments that it is a rather standard, but he dismisses her concern, saying it is nothing. Suddenly stops in his tracks, shocked as he repeats the names hero and saintess from the story. His eyes widen in horror as he realizes this is the same world as the game from his past life, and that, with her golden hair and scarlet eyes, is the villainous Caroline. A memory from his past life shows him sitting on the sofa, dejectedly realizing that another option to save the villainess has failed as she is defeated on screen. He had desperately strategized, thinking a survival route might exist if the capture target was close to Caroline, but ultimately concluded that this was wrong as well. His sister had found him still awake playing the game late one night, explaining that she had woken up because she was thirsty. She asked if he liked the game that much since he had spent so much time on it, telling him to stop staring and go to sleep before wishing him good night. He reflects that it was because of what his sister said that he developed the self-serving wish to find a survival route for Caroline, believing it would also be a way to keep by his side. However, a route like that never existed for the villainess in the game, and in the end, death came for his own sister as well. With his heart pounding in his chest, panics at the horrifying realization that this sweet child is the villainess fated to die, thinking he cannot go through that again. Completely unaware of his inner turmoil, gives her brother a loving hug and a kiss on the cheek. He mentally begins to sum up the situation, confirming that he has been reincarnated into the tale of the brave saint, a dating game he played in his previous life. The young boy now exists as a background character who is also the older brother of the villainous Caroline. He recalls that in the game, the player becomes either the hero or the saint depending on their chosen gender and meets romantic interests during their time at the academy. The story is split into 3 parts, with the first taking place at the academy and the second being an adventure to reseal the awakened demon lord. Remembers that the third and final part has individual routes for each love interest, though the academy section makes up more than half of the game's story. He knows that Caroline only appears when the player chooses the female route and is characterized as a selfish, arrogant, and incredibly jealous person from the start. This is a direct contrast to the game's protagonist, who is portrayed as an honest, innocent, and pure character befitting the title of saint. As more people are drawn to the saint, Caroline's jealousy causes her to lash out, but this only serves to improve the saint's reputation when the various love interests come to her defense. He remembers the game's plot in which Caroline is unable to bear her jealousy, joins hands with the demons to kill the saint, and ultimately dies as a result of her misdeeds. His somber thoughts are interrupted when gently pulls on his vest to get his attention. She proudly presents a drawing she has made, happily calling out to her as he asks what it is. Praises her work as amazing and very good, giving her a thankful pat on the head as she closes her eyes in contentment. As his sister happily asks to draw more for him, he becomes resolute, thinking that he must be able to do something to avoid her death. The young boy stands with his arms crossed, concluding that if he raises right, she will not grow up to be arrogant and therefore will not fall to the demon's temptation. His attention is drawn to two servants in the hallway who whisper to each other while looking in his direction. He then recalls a critical piece of lore. The reason Caroline becomes a villainess is because she is treated coldly by the servants and receives no love from her parents. The boy walks through the mansion, considering that this seems to be the logical cause for her tragic path. With a new goal in mind, he hops up the grand staircase, pondering the concept of parents' love and how he can provide it for his sister. Despairs, realizing he has only seen their parents once when they dropped off and now faces the impossible task of getting them to love her. Stealing his resolve, he decides that nothing will happen unless he tries to contact them first and knocks on a large door. The boy stands before the butler in a large study and asks to speak with the master and the mistress of the house. He is stunned to learn from the butler that his parents do not even live there, meaning there is no chance of meeting them anytime soon. The toddler silently screams at his absent parents for abandoning their children in an entirely separate mansion. Panics as he realizes it has been a whole 3 months since he left the message, but his thoughts are interrupted by telling him she needs to wee-wee. Her brother looks at her with urgency, telling the squirming girl that they will go soon. In a mad dash, he scoops up his sister and runs frantically down the hallway towards the bathroom. The boy emerges from the restroom carrying a happy and relieved, thinking to himself that they made it just in time. His eyes widen as a voice from downstairs suddenly announces the arrival of the master and mistress. From his perch on the second-floor railing, excitedly calls out to his father and mother as they arrive in the foyer below. The butler panics, shouting for to watch out and get down from there immediately. Completely ignoring her son's greeting, his mother turns to the head servant and asks if he has prepared tea for them. The young boy realizes with utter frustration that they are ignoring him as his father impatiently orders the tea to be served right away. After asks what a mother and father are, her brother tries to reassure her that they simply did not notice them, shocked that she does not even know who they are. He sits down with his sister and uses a family of stuffed rabbits to explain the concept, identifying the rabbit mom, the rabbit dad, and their little rabbit child. The toddler continues the lesson by explaining that a father and mother are people who love you, hug you, and stay by your side to protect you. She enthusiastically confirms that she understands when her brother asks if she gets it. With a bright, beaming smile, the little girl then points to her brother and lovingly declares him to be her mother-father. Overcome with a warm, glowing emotion, tells his sister that he needs to go to the restroom, leaving her to question where he is going. With determined steps, decides that his first priority must be to make their parents go and see properly. He peeks through the crack in a large door, overhearing his father inside discussing the need to think about their territory. His mother wonders why the children were even outside their rooms, and their father dismisses the matter as a pain, delegating it to the butler. She coldly instructs the butler to ignore his request to meet, complaining that kids are annoying and she does not want them dirtying her clothes with drool. The young boy stands dejectedly outside the closed door as he hears his mother tell the butler to just feed them some story and deal with it himself. Greets him happily as her mother-father and asks for a book, and he thinks to himself that from now on he is just her. He agrees to read to her, accepting in his thoughts that he may just be her older brother. The young boy then resolves to do his best to love her as much as any normal parent would, as he is shown taking care of her in various ways. While they are outside in the garden, she points with excitement at a pretty, glowing butterfly and explains that it is a magic light butterfly. He then points out the gardener to his sister, who shyly peeks out from behind him as the man turns and greets them. With a bright and joyful smile, thanks the gardener for taking care of the beautiful flowers. Watches her with a gentle smile, relieved that for now his sister is a kind and good kid overflowing with affection and is likely no longer fated to die. However, he knows he cannot let his guard down, as her personality could still change drastically since she is only 2 years old. The toddler also worries that because this world is so similar to the game, it might forcibly push her down the same tragic path that leads to her death. His resolve is strengthened as he watches his sister happily playing with the magic light butterflies, vowing to do anything to protect his cute little sister. She encourages her brother to join her, and as he hesitantly copies her pose, he realizes that in order to change any potential outcome, he needs to get stronger. The young boy wakes up early one morning while his sister is still asleep, determined to begin his training. While stretching outside, he recalls once hearing that it is not good for children to build too much muscle. Decides to start with some simple running and calisthenics, counting out his stretches as he prepares to begin. With newfound purpose, he starts running, determined to train in a way that is suitable for his young body and learn how to fight. After his training, decides to investigate magic and makes his way to the mansion's kitchen. He plans to practice magic just like in the game, watching from the doorway as a chef lights an oven by casting fireball. It is explained that the magic of this world comes in attributes which are reflected in a person's hair and eye color, such as the chef's red features. One of the kitchen staff turns around and asks the young master what he is doing there, but hesitates for a moment. He nervously says that he wanted some water, a request the man then passes along to a nearby kitchen maid. The maid, who has blue hair and eyes, demonstrates her ability to use water magic by summoning. She expertly guides the water into a cup and offers it to the boy, who can only say "wow" in amazement. The chef scoffs at how easily the young noble is impressed by simple magic, calling it a pity that he is colorless, as internally confirms this is true. While drinking, he recalls that white hair indicates no attribute, and that while everyone has mana, only those without an attribute cannot create spells by materializing it. The narration concludes that because of this, the only ones who cannot inherently use spells are the colorless. In the kitchen, a servant speculates that the young lady with hair will surely inherit the house, as it is bad to have a colorless heir. A maid then gushes that the master and mistress would be delighted if manifested light magic, before angrily questioning how the parents could treat such an important child so coldly. Listens from the doorway as the servants gossip about bragging if uses light magic, dismissing him as the colorless brother and confirming his poor treatment. He reflects that this is how people see the colorless, as complete failures from the moment they are born. The young boy watches his sister sleep, and thinks to himself that not having an attribute does not mean a person is completely useless. He sees rubbing her sleepy eyes and gently suggests they take a nap, to which she quietly agrees. Later, pants in the forest as he begins to practice physical boost, a technique that strengthens the body by channeling mana through it. He recalls that this technique was alluded to in the game as something anyone can use, but he still cannot cast magic as the true nature of the colorless attribute remains undiscovered. The toddler concentrates with all his might, knowing that for now he must focus on mastering physical boost and teaching himself how to handle mana. His arm suddenly erupts in a painful burst of energy as he learns the hard way that messing up the output of this technique can cause serious injury. Considers the gruesome possibility of his head exploding if he were to mess up the technique there, concluding that of course no one would use it with such a risk. He clenches his bloody fist with resolve, believing that mastering this dangerous technique is his only choice and the only way he can protect. In her bed, the little girl begins to stir from her nap with a small, sleepy sound. She sits up and rubs her eyes, looking around the large bedroom and calling out for her, wondering where he is. Finds him and gives him a big hug, happily exclaiming that she has found her and apologizes for not being there when she woke up. She notices his injured hand with concern and he quickly explains with a nervous smile that he was just practicing magic, a word she repeats with confusion. Quickly wraps his hand with a cloth to hide the injury, apologizing if it scared her, but the sight has already brought to the verge of tears. Realizing he has frightened her, the boy decides he needs to make sure she does not find him practicing again and offers to read a book to calm her down. He begins reading a story about an elder of the forest who requires 3 items to grant a wish, and his sister listens intently, her distress forgotten. Then becomes completely lost in a complex thought about why the game's protagonist could use the technique so easily, leaving to look up from the book and question her distracted. Calls out to her brother again, snapping him out of his intense internal monologue about his future plans. Days pass as he continues to secretly train, enduring painful mishaps with his magic while his sister waits patiently in her bed. Dedicates himself to both his studies and his secret training, all while spending quality time with his sister. One day, wakes up to find her brother gone and begins to search the large, empty mansion for him. She makes her way to the garden and asks the gardener if he has seen, and he replies that he has not. A young apprentice tells her that she should not be walking around alone and offers to escort her back to the mansion. Looks back at the sprawling estate, sadly calling out for her one more time before heading back inside. Meanwhile, is in the forest practicing his physical enhancement, easily snapping a thick piece of wood in two. He clenches his fist and successfully crushes a rock, realizing that he can now double his strength and may be able to go even further. With a look of sheer determination, the young boy turns back to his training, ready to push his limits even more. Upon finishing his training, turns around and is shocked to find his sister standing right behind him, calling out her name in surprise. He approaches her and asks when she got there and if she was watching him the whole time, but she only mutters the word hate in response. The young girl continues to repeat the word hate, adding magic as her brother looks on with concern, calling out her name. With tears streaming down her face, says that she wants something, looking at him with a heartbreaking expression that leaves him speechless. She clutches her hands to her chest and tearfully confesses that she wants her to stay with her. Is horrified, questioning what he has been doing and realizing how his actions have caused her pain. He berates himself for hurting his sister and making her cry, understanding that his quest for strength has defeated the very purpose of protecting her. The toddler looks at his crying sister and realizes with clarity what she has needed from him most of all. With a sincere apology, he pulls her into a tight, comforting embrace as a magical light envelops them. Tells his sister that while it may sound like an excuse, he loves her more than anything and nothing will ever change that. Looks up at him with teary eyes and asks if he really means it, and her brother confirms his love with a sincere, "I promise." Her tears immediately turn into a bright, joyful giggle as she looks at him with pure happiness. As they walk back towards the mansion hand in hand, she calls out to her brother and tells him to listen. The little girl asks with concern if he is sure about this, wondering if magic and getting hurt is not scary, but then declares with confidence that she is sure because she is with her. Then clarifies with a determined pout that she does not hate magic itself, but she hates seeing her get hurt. Is completely taken aback, realizing with shame that she cried because she was worried about him and that she will love magic as long as he stays with her. He happily decides to teach his sister some magic and she enthusiastically agrees, calling him sensei. The toddler begins the lesson by explaining that her attribute is fire, which means she has 2 attributes in total, light and fire, due to her hair and red eyes. Recalls from the game that Caroline, despite having the aptitude for light magic, could never use it, as it is a rare ability that requires more than just the attribute. He remembers a rumor from the game that the key to using light magic was to think of someone else and cherish them in your heart, a vague concept known as the magic of the saint. As happily creates a ball of dark fire, wonders if this means she should now be able to use light magic since she fulfills the rumored condition. He pats his sister on the head and tells her she is amazing, causing her to giggle with delight. The boy watches her practice and worries that if she uses light magic, she will be targeted by powerful figures, questioning if he can protect her on his own. As time passes and the siblings grow well together, he begins to gain hope for their uncertain future. Their peaceful days are interrupted by the arrival of a new maid, who greets them with a formal "pleased to meet you." She introduces herself as their new caretaker and instinctively holds close as the new maid stands before them. The young boy immediately recognizes from his memories of the game that this woman is a spy. A flashback reveals receiving her first job directly from a high-ranking member of the Holy Royal family. The man had contemptuously called her a useless troublemaker, ordering her to fulfill her duty and prove her worth. Back in the present, looks on warily as formally introduces herself as their new caretaker. Announces that she will be taking care of the two of them starting today, and replies from off-panel that it is nice to meet her. The new maid comments that the room feels a little warm and says that she will allow herself to open a window. As she turns to walk, her heeled boot suddenly slides forward after slipping on something unseen on the floor. Lands flat on her face with a splat, leaving her with a comically bruised and reddened nose. She then tells the children that she will be on standby in the hallway and to call if they need anything before promptly exiting the room. Standing guard in the hall, the maid internally identifies her target as Caroline's thoughts reveal her true mission, which is to observe for her potential to use light magic and report back to the palace as soon as she sees even a glimpse of it. Nevertheless, she waits patiently outside the closed door for her opportunity to observe the children. The door opens and steps out with his sister, explaining that needs to go to the bathroom after the maid asks what business they have. He tells that she does not really have to come with them, but she insists that it is her job as she follows the siblings down the corridor. Suggests to Caroline that she ought to call, but the young girl proudly tells her brother to look at her instead. Her brother agrees that they should begin her education as a lady soon and gently encourages his sister to call him from now on. He pulls her into a warm hug and praises her for doing a good job, causing to giggle shyly in his arms. Watches the siblings' affectionate display and thinks to herself that they get along surprisingly well for nobles. She finds it bothersome that is the only one taking care of his sister, but recognizes it is convenient for her mission to get close to Caroline. Later, the maid casts a disguise spell on a letter, transforming it into a glowing bird. She releases the magical bird from her gloved hand, sending it flying off into the distance to deliver her report. Watches the servant from a window with a thoughtful and suspicious expression, sensing that something is amiss. Serves the children afternoon tea, announcing that it comes with rose cookies today. She then sternly corrects for not using the proper honorific, just as the young girl excitedly asks her brother if the tea is made from flowers from their garden. With her eyes closed, calmly corrects grammar, telling her that the proper phrasing is "are these," not "this is." As the young girl tries to correct herself, the maid begins to pour her tea, but her eyes remain shut, causing the liquid to spill all over the saucer. Smiles smugly and asks to pour his own cup, but insists that it is her job and tells him no. She proceeds to pour his tea with her eyes still closed, once again making a complete mess of it. The maid places the overflowing cup and saucer in front of the boy and simply says, "Here you are." As she clears the table, thinks to herself that she should make sure people accept her as Lady Caroline's maid. She brings the used tableware to the kitchen and asks the staff if they would mind if she washed it. The head chef acknowledges that she is the new maid and says he has no idea what persuaded her to come work for them. A kitchen maid joins in, calling a weirdo for choosing to work for a family with a colorless heir that is destined for ruin. With a placid expression, counters their assumptions by pointing out that the younger sister has the light attribute, which should bring some hope for the family's future. The kitchen maid agrees that brings hope, adding that she is also kind to the servants and innocently attached to her colorless brother. While washing the dishes, mentions that Caroline really wanted to know if the rose jam was made from the roses in the garden. The kitchen staff is delighted to hear this and eagerly plans to serve her sugar-coated roses next time. They excitedly discuss the need to brown-nose the potential future saintess, but worry about the young master glaring at them if they overdo it. A maid approaches and asks if she has finished with the dishes, offering to put them away for her. She is completely shocked to see that the new maid has broken every single plate and cup, and simply confirms that yes, she has finished. Later that evening, the maid knocks on the children's door to announce that their dinner is ready. At the dinner table, proudly shows off her napkin to her brother as tells that he will help his sister. The maid insists that she will be the one to assist Caroline, but the little girl defiantly declares that she can eat by herself. Praises his sister for her independence while simultaneously corrects her grammar, prompting to repeat the correct phrase with annoyance. Cheerfully exclaims, "Yeah," but sternly corrects her, stating that the proper word is yes, which earns the maid an annoyed glare. Later that night, the maid brings a nightgown into the bedroom and instructs Caroline to change into it. The young girl immediately hides behind her brother, clinging to his arm with a pout. Cheerfully offers to help his sister change, but insists that it is her job to do so. The young boy explains with a warm smile that he likes taking care of and asks the maid to please let him, to which she reluctantly agrees. Wishes and Caroline a good night before closing the door and leaving them for the evening. The maid walks alone through a dilapidated section of the mansion, her expression thoughtful. In the servants' quarters, she overhears one maid ask another how long they think the young master's new attendant will last. The other servant recalls how the first maid couldn't stand the young master being colorless and resigned quickly because she viewed him as subhuman. The gossiping continues as one servant comments that the young master is also creepy and has something weird about him, a sentiment the other servant completely agrees with. The maids continue their gossip, speculating that might be possessed and suggesting it would be better to keep him away from the young lady. Listens from her room, hearing them complain that the young master stops anyone from interacting with his sister. The maids are startled when she suddenly enters their room, asking if she is done for the day. They complain that it is unfair for her to have such an easy job being responsible for the young master when they are so busy. The other servants chime in, suggesting that should help them since the young master will take care of everything himself, with one calling him a waste for being colorless. Ignores their taunts and simply says it is time for them to go to sleep, leaving the gossiping maids looking confused. In the privacy of her own room, she wonders to herself if the young master is really just currying favor with his little sister. The maid recalls her first meeting with him, realizing that his calm and collected eyes were actually sizing her up to see if she would be a boon to him and his sister. She ties a ribbon in her hair and reminds herself not to mix her feelings with her work, focusing on her goal to stay by Lady Caroline's side. A painful memory from her past surfaces, showing her younger self running away as cruel voices call her a disgusting child, a parasite, and a nuisance that nobody wants. In her painful memory, a younger desperately reaches out for help as someone off-screen yells at her to not come near them, calling her filth. Her father had explained that their family was once banished from the country after losing a political conflict and now thrives thanks to the royal family's help. He had then coldly ordered his daughter to offer her entire being, her eyes, ears, body, hair, and soul, to the royal family. The man's cruel words echo in her mind as he told her that even if she was useless, she could at least serve as a sacrificial pawn for their family. Young had wondered if dying for her family would finally make her father accept her. The next morning tells the maid that she does not need to worry about them, but she replies that it is her job and it only makes sense for her to work the hours she is paid for. Tells Caroline it is time to change clothes, but the little girl throws a tantrum and clings to her brother, insisting that she wants him to do it. The maid calmly asks if she wants to act as a servant, reminding her that it is part of a lady's duty to delegate work appropriately. Then tells his sister that when she becomes a splendid lady, she will be the pride and joy of his life, prompting her to ask if that would make him happy. With a look of pure determination, the young girl declares that she gets it and that she will try her best. Matter-of-factly corrects the young girl's phrasing, telling her that the proper response is, "Very well, I will work hard at it," much to his annoyance. Under the maid's strict tutelage, she begins to learn proper etiquette, from how to use a knife and fork to how to curtsy gracefully. A more composed then happily challenges her brother to a race to the gazebo, declaring that the race is on before he even has a chance to respond. Turns to their maid with a gentle smile and sincerely thanks her for everything she has done. He explains that she came at a good time as he would have had to keep a proper distance from his sister soon, and admits he doesn't really know anything about girls while saying he will be counting on her from now on. The maid replies with a small smile that of course he can count on her, which earns a wide, genuine grin from. The young boy then runs past her to join the race, shouting back that they need to start at the same time or it will be unfair. As she watches the siblings playfully race towards the gazebo, wonders to herself if she has finally managed to win his trust. A painful memory of her father calling her a useless nuisance surfaces, and she thinks to herself that his gratitude feels very different. The scene flashes forward to a snowy day where an older points something out to her brother as they share a warm embrace amongst the winter flowers. Points with pure delight, exclaiming that there are bunnies and that they are so white and cute. Suddenly, one of the rabbits turns towards them with a ferocious snarl, prompting to shout that it is no good. The young girl calmly kneels down and tells the hostile bunny that it is not scary, gently inviting it to come closer. She happily cuddles the now docile rabbit, remarking on how fluffy it is and how its eyes match her own. Her brother agrees, adding that the bunny has the same beautiful, red eyes as she does, while the maid looks on in disbelief. Later that night, writes her regular report, noting that while there was no development in the target's magic, she wonders if the rabbit incident was a hint of her light magic. She hesitates, deciding that the event is too speculative to report and that she is not withholding information by omitting it. The next day, the siblings are seen exercising together in a field of tulips, counting out their stretches. Draws a circle in the dirt and asks his sister if she remembers what he taught her yesterday, and she confirms that she does. He explains that while casting magic is said to be a matter of intuition, he believes she will not be able to cast spells properly unless she understands the fundamentals first. From her hiding spot, observes that must love Lady Caroline very much to be so passionate about teaching her despite being colorless. She then wonders to herself if he must surely be jealous of his incredibly talented younger sister. The maid watches as concentrates with all her might, grunting with effort as she tries to cast a spell. A burst of sparkling light suddenly erupts from the young girl's hands, leaving her to stare in wide-eyed amazement. Recognizes the spell as Light Ball and realizes with a jolt that has successfully used light magic. The maid immediately understands the implications of this, knowing she must report it right away, which will lead to Caroline being summoned to the royal palace. Excitedly shows her brother the glowing ball of light she created, proudly exclaiming, "Look what I did." Knows that her job will force the siblings to live apart, a thought that weighs heavily on her as she watches them. Later that evening, the maid clears the dinner table with a somber expression, her mind still on the events of the day. As she is about to leave, calls out her name and asks to have a talk with her after falls asleep. Is shown fast asleep in her bed, completely unaware of the tense meeting about to take place. Leads the maid to a secluded spot, and she asks what this is all about, sensing a strange feeling coming from him. Her eyes widen in complete shock as he calmly asks if she is a spy from the palace. Panics and begins to tremble uncontrollably, and takes her flustered reaction as a yes. He then proposes a deal, offering to keep her identity a secret if she stays quiet about magic, but the maid refuses, stating her loyalty to the royal family. The toddler then calmly reveals that he knows she is actually an elf, much to her utter astonishment. He threatens to expose her if she does not listen to his request, knowing the public backlash would be severe since elves are considered enemies. She realizes that he would throw the entire nation into chaos, but smirks and says that the only thing that matters to him is safety. The young boy then points out that it would be her, the one who swore loyalty, who would bring ruin upon the royal family. With a confident and calculating gaze, he asks her one last time if she will accept his offer. Defeated, bows and agrees to his terms, accepting his order to not report anything about the siblings without his express permission. She then feels a strange sensation, as if she was just wrapped in something, and comments that the spell will not work if it is one-sided. He then makes a promise of his own, vowing to keep secret for as long as she does not break their contract. With a gentle smile, the toddler finalizes their agreement and wishes her a good night, looking forward to their continued work together. The elf is left stunned and bewildered, wondering how the situation ended up like this. She casts a conceal spell to hide her elven ears, reminding herself that as a trained spy, nothing is supposed to make her waver. The maid is deeply unsettled by her own reaction, wondering why she was so scared of the young master. She also ponders the strange and powerful spells he used during their confrontation. The elf is left with a profound sense of mystery, questioning who this child who used spells she had never even heard of before really is.